Hello, and thank you for joining our web presentation today. My name is Mia Zucht, and I'm your host for this event. Today we are speaking about Symantec and VMware, so we appreciate all of you joining. A couple housekeeping items I'd like to address prior to turning it over to our first speaker today. I want to let everybody on the line know that we are recording this presentation, and this presentation will be sent out within the next 48 hours to each of the attendees. So you are able to review these at a later time as well. We are going to, for the consistency of the presentation today, we are going to ask that all Q&A does wait till the end. And you do have two options to go ahead and to ask a question regarding the presentation that you've seen today or any questions that you do have. And that is via the Q&A feature on the right side of your screen if you are connected to the webinar. And you can go ahead and type your question in there and we will address it at the end. Or we will be opening it up for a live Q&A as well, where you can certainly address the speakers at that time. One other thing we will be doing at the end of the presentation is we will be raffling off two $100 Amazon cards for all attendees. And so we will be announcing those at random again at the end of the presentation, so make sure that you stay. If at this time, I am going to turn it over to our first presenter, Mr. Greg, and I'm going to try to pronounce his name correctly, Greg Bielowski, and he is the VMware Technical Solutions Engineer. And with that, Greg?
Thank you, Mia. You did a great job on the last name, by the way. So,
thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for joining. Today, I wanted to really discuss this new concept around delivering and securing the software-defined data center. Coming off the heels of VMworld, this was a big topic there. So I wanted to kind of dive in and give you guys kind of an overview of how this came about. So really, from a data center perspective, we have a fundamental issue of provisioning within a data center. It takes a long time to get the right resources to deploy a business application or an initiative within a company based on the traditional ways of siloed type environments. So with the traditional physical environment, we were procuring the server, installing all the components, the OS, the applications, and then testing it out and putting that into production, which that process was very lengthy, taking sometimes roughly months to get that up and running. Today, with virtualization, we can create a virtual machine in a matter of minutes. I can pop over my laptop and give it some resources, and we can get that up and running in a matter of minutes. But unfortunately, when we step into some of these larger data centers, we have other technologies that play into the provisioning that aren't as flexible as just creating a virtual machine. And that really pushes back that provisioning time from that minutes where we could just spin that up to back to days. We have to work with other teams within that data center. Storage, we need our storage administrators to kind of go in and carve up the storage we need for that. We need our networking administration administrators to give us the right IP addresses, to give us the security, set up the firewalls for these applications, and then to get everything monitored and managed. We're layering on all these extra layers that typically are manual and rigid processes. So with virtualization, we were really able to drive that consolidation, to better utilize the resources within those physical servers, and then make it more resilient and highly available. So we're really minimizing downtime. But how can we kind of streamline all these other? The problem is, how do we streamline all these other facets within the data center to get to better address our application needs and our workloads now that need to be up and running more than ever. And the whole idea behind this is what's driving the software-defined data center. Right now, you're probably hearing a lot more buzz around software-defined networking and some of these other ones, but the whole idea is to really break down the whole data center into these different layers. So if we were to just kind of summarize what the definition of a software-defined data center is, it's really pooling all your infrastructure into a virtualized pool where we can deliver this as a service, and the virtual data center is then managed entirely and driven by software. So taking that physical that was typically provisioned in months, taking our virtual machines that had those extra layers that now took days, and streamlining it into these virtual data centers that are all entirely managed by software. And this allows us to really standardize our whole infrastructure across our typical x86 software, or excuse me, hardware, eliminating any of the complexities of having different appliances and specialized hardware within those environments. It gives you kind of this holistic approach where we can drive the whole unified platform through a single management window, and extend that out to the whole data center fabric. It's also adaptive, where we can kind of self-program this and give it profiles, so then as applications change on the back end, it can auto-tier to different levels of storage, or different policies that we have programmed in the back end. And then the last piece is kind of around resiliency. So having this architecture that compensates for failing hardware, providing different failover and redundancy techniques on the back end, and really driving fault tolerance for all our critical applications. So for driving this, you can kind of see these different containers that we've made. So we've taken our storage and defining it into its own layer with different tiers. Also with our networking and security, we can have these different bubbles where different applications are now kept away from others. And taking these traditional applications and operating systems, we can break down our data centers into these virtual data centers, and take our typical workloads and still provide, even though we're pooling all these resources together, create isolation by separating these with different security policies and network segmentation within the software-defined data center. So taking a lot of the risk of sharing resources, but giving us the benefits of more cost-effective ways of leveraging our hardware. So when we think of virtualization, vSphere is one of the big products that pops up. It's the industry leader, really driving the virtualization space here. And same thing is going to be with our vCloud suite, which is going to be the underlying infrastructure for delivering the architecture for cloud. So when we hear all the talks about everything going to cloud, and now you're hearing software-defined data center, they're not two different things. Software-defined data center is the architecture that companies are standardizing to deliver private, public, and hybrid cloud infrastructure. So it's just a different way of delivering all these data center services, whether it's the compute, storage, networking, even security and management from that perspective. So the vCloud suite, it's not necessarily a new product from VMware's perspective. It's a suite of products. So taking our flagship VMware's vSphere, now layering on top vCloud networking and security. We can provide data availability through Site Recovery Manager for failover. With the vCloud connector and vCloud Director, we now can have a self-service portal where either different departments or different tenants that want access to this infrastructure can have a self-service portal and make requests for those resources on the fly. And that kind of is what builds up our cloud infrastructure. And then on top of that is where we have our cloud management. One of the big products driving that is our vCenter Operations Management Suite, which is now kind of included also with our new vSOM offering. But giving you the insight into that environment to make intelligent decisions and set up automated decisions to properly place different virtual machines and workloads and identify issues. We can automate and move these workloads to other type cloud infrastructures like the new VCHS, and also provide chargeback for all those tenants or departments within this infrastructure. So here are the three main offerings. You can see we kind of have a standard that plays more on the cloud infrastructure side and gives you the basis of what you need to really build that foundation going forward. So giving you the Enterprise Plus, which is at the high end of the product, giving you load balancing, storage load balancing, I/O control within this new software-defined data center. Laying on top of that, the vCloud Director, but more importantly, the vCloud networking and security that gives us the availability and protection within this network. And that's going to be one of the big ones I'm going to touch on in a minute here. The other major one is going to be that vCenter operations management. So providing the ability to troubleshoot your environment, identify really what issues are going to happen, whether it's immediate, if there's going to be any risk coming down in the future, or driving any type of compliance and optimization within the environment itself. So when we kind of take a look at the layered security approach, VMware really plays at almost every level here. Obviously, with the cloud, we're driving the cloud infrastructure. We have our cloud hybrid service now that is just got announced last week. We have our edge gateways, which is going to fall under our vCloud networking security that I'm going to highlight here in a moment. We have our core, which would really play in that networking space. We did have that announcement around NSX. And really in the data center is really where we're driving it from a virtualization perspective, handling everything from servers, backup, working with our key partners to help drive that. And then access control is really where we partner to handle the endpoint and encryption for those layers. So I did mention about vCenter operations, and what this is a dashboard into your environment to tell you the health, risk, and efficiency of all the information that you need to optimize the software-defined data center. So it's going to eliminate false positives, give you alerting about the real issues within your environment, enable you to really identify the root cause and of any performance problems, SLAs within that environment, and monitor not only your physical or your virtual infrastructure, but the hardware resources underneath. And really give you the visibility to be more proactive and identify the service level issues before they become problems in your environment. And part of this operations management is the ability to go out and provide continuous compliance to your virtual machines, your vSphere hosts, and your storage and other networking devices within your environment. So based on these policies that you can load up, whether they're vSphere hardening, PCI, HIPAA, compliance, maybe just your own internal hardening guidelines, you're able to load in these different templates and guarantee that every one of these workloads on an ongoing basis are going to meet those requirements. It also has the ability to track and correlate changes to those virtual machines. So if a firewall rule was changed or a networking rule, to correlate back to what exact user made those changes and how it impacted performance. The other aspect that really plays from a security side is going to be around our networking and security suite. So this used to be known as our vShield deployment, our vShield offering. There's really three major components that really play into this, and that's our edge gateway, our vShield application, so internally within the server or virtual data center, like firewalls, and then our endpoint, vShield endpoint software that would give you the APIs to do integrating with the virtual machines themselves from a antivirus type perspective for traffic. So when we talk about edge, that's really going to give you your capabilities around deploying virtual data centers, really controlling access into it. So providing VPN, site-to-site, load balancing, and NAT services. So as you're having these multi-tenant or maybe different departments access different resources, you're able to isolate them within the environment. On the vShield application side, being able to provide firewall resources for different applications within those virtual data centers, provide data leakage, so you're not letting specific pieces of information get out to other pieces of the network within that virtual data center. And then the vShield endpoint, which is actually going to be more touched on with when we get into the Symantec side, but really giving you every aspect that you need to integrate and provide the secure environment that you would have in a traditional environment. But the flexibility to deploy these is all virtual machines or virtual appliances that we can scale without having to go out and order additional VPN appliances or other hardware resources that might hold up the line of business for that. So that's really how, from a VMware perspective, we're addressing a lot of these different layers of security, from the cloud, the gateway, core, and the data center, and giving you guys access from a partner level, specifically with Symantec, to secure the endpoints and everything as well. So this time, I will hand it over to Chip.
Thanks, Greg. Looks like I got it.
Great. Thank you. And Chip, for those of you on the line, this is Mr. Chip Epps, and he is the Principal Project Manager with Symantec. So, and Chip, please take it over.
Hey, thank you so much. So for any of those on the line that I may have met at the Ingram event earlier in August, it was a great event. I appreciate everyone's participation. If we haven't had a chance to make introductions, I am a product manager at Symantec, and my focus has been on, I'll call it the virtual infrastructure, cloud infrastructure, and in essence, what's happening in this software-defined data center space. And so I want to take this opportunity to talk to you about where is Symantec in helping organizations effectively and efficiently protect their VMware environments, and also talk a little bit about some of the announcements that were introduced and some of the new capabilities launched at VMworld. I guess that was last week, I guess, in fact. So a lot of great news around, I'll call it the NSX platform that Greg had spoke to, and where that's all heading. So first and foremost, obviously Symantec is a security company. We constantly are researching the threat landscape and trying to understand, the evolution of, the attack techniques, where the vulnerabilities and weaknesses in infrastructure reside, how they're looking at, how these attackers are actually, whether they're state-sponsored or not, how they're actually looking to gain access to, information of a variety of forms. And, the media tends to focus on, large enterprises and the big breaches. But the reality is, based on, the Symantec Annual Threat Report, which is available to you online from Symantec at the Internet Security Threat Report from 2013, which summarized, the landscape in 2012. And then we're obviously working on, I'll call it the next series on this. But, organizations that represent, I'll call it the small and medium business, which is maybe a focus area for a lot of the partners on the WebEx today, that still is, 50% of the attack volume that we're experiencing, that we're documenting from a research perspective. So, I think it's completely relevant to have this discussion with, security partners in this area, because, quite honestly, the attackers really don't differentiate. It's really what the conclusion is to me is, they're looking for opportunity, they're looking for information, and we want to provide protection for all flavors of the enterprise and small and medium business. And so this goes back about 5 years ago. We started looking at not just VMware, but the broader virtual data center, and trying to look at how we would want to re-architect our security solutions. And in a very simple model, we looked at the infrastructure in this illustration. And this sort of aligns very well with, I'll call it the vSphere paradigm that Greg had spoken to. There's a slightly different view of the world, I would say, in a software-defined data center when you're bridging out into, cloud resources like vCloud Hybrid Service, the cloud service that they introduced at VMworld, or you're going out to other SaaS applications or public cloud infrastructures. And so this particular model is one that's really important in looking at how we build security, because it's essentially a new platform. There's a new degree of, I'll call it elasticity in motion, that when security controls are bound to a physical environment is simply different. And so we're obviously building products and optimizing them for this sort of scenario. And today we do have, for example, products at each of these points, whether they're virtual desktops or virtual servers, and some of the products that you might have there, for example, would be Symantec Endpoint Protection or Critical System Protection, which I'll drill down into further. But we also have products specifically for the data store, for example, in NetApp filers and things like that. We also have recognized that the VMware infrastructure in and of itself, both at the hypervisor and at the management level, introduce their own unique security challenges, and hence we have security controls that touch those 2 points as well, and I'll talk to that during the presentation. So just to put names behind those layers, I did throw this one slide together so you could see, but again, we do have protections that are specifically targeted for these areas that have been either optimized or extended to address the uniqueness of the virtual data center. But we're also, toward the end, I'll talk a little bit about, I'll call it our next generation offerings that are more tied to some of the new platforms from VMware and the software-defined data center vision that's evolving. So critical system protection is one that inherently is designed to protect the server infrastructure. And so whether it's critical systems, which is where many customers put it, but just any broad server infrastructure. So whether it's your database servers, your Exchange servers, your SharePoint servers, for example, we have distinct policies that would help protect those server environments better. So I'll call it the ability to stop zero-day attacks or target attacks against your servers is one area of focus for us. And this particular solution doesn't differentiate between virtual and physical. So it is an agent-based model, but it's not a blacklist or signature-based model. So you don't have, I'll call it, some of the inherent challenges from a resource utilization perspective associated with, I'll call it, traditional antivirus. The policy-driven least access or least privileged access control model, it delivers sort of intrusion detection or prevention policies to harden servers, in essence. But we've also extended this capability to look at greater protection for vSphere environments. So monitoring the ESXi environment itself, or the configuration files and the access into that ESXi hypervisor itself. Is that consistent with your compliance or governance or access control policies, for example? But also we've extended critical system protection to harden the vCenter server itself, recognizing that's a critical weakness. If, for example, vCenter were to be compromised, you would have thousands of vulnerable or susceptible virtual machines that particular console manages that would be at risk. And we've probably all heard of customer or scenarios where a disgruntled employee had left an organization that happened to be a VMware admin, and somewhere in his history had secured some remote access and had gone back into a vCenter server environment and deleted a lot of critical infrastructure servers. And so we recognize that protecting not just the hypervisor itself, but putting a hardening policy around vCenter is critical. And again, the hardening guidelines available from VMware are well published. They're hundreds of pages. We've simply automated the implementation of that so that you can make it, you have some greater assurance that those best practices are put into production. And then the last thing is around visibility and control, and how critical system protection often serves as a compensating control for environments where, for example, maybe you don't want to put a very heavy footprint on your servers for various performance or latency sensitive applications, but you still need to deliver compliance around that. So this critical system protection has proven to be an adequate compensating control for those environments. And so to illustrate a little bit further how this might lay out from an architectural perspective, it is agent-based, and so there will be an agent, for example, in your host environment running as a virtual machine. So there's a small VM that would basically be a monitoring service on your ESXi hypervisor, for example. We would have agents that would run in the workload. Here it's actually looking at, might appear to be two agents, but the reality is we have one agent per virtual machine that monitors the application and the operating environment associated with those servers. We also have an agent that would sit on your vCenter server. And so we can harden those resources and monitor what the activities associated with those resources through critical system protection. Since it's a very thin agent, easy to deploy and reasonably self-contained, it also has the potential to migrate into your cloud environment without a significant management overhead. So critical system protection is a product that is been in our portfolio for quite some time. It's in most financial and government organizations that have very strict audit and compliance mandates or fear that the theft of data, potentially either customer data or credit card related data, would have a huge impact on their organization. So again, it's a great tool. As a validation point, and I always like to provide proof points, we've been running this as a black hat capture the flag scenario for several years. The last one was run in 2012. We didn't run it this year for a variety of reasons, but we largely put an unpatched XP workstation into, I'll call it, made it accessible to the community. We had 10 known vulnerabilities in the last scenario that we ran, and those were provided to us through Rapid7. But through an out-of-box policy to harden and protect that XP workstation, hackers from the general community, I'll call it penetration experts from NSA, DISA, and even the anonymous organization, all failed to capture the flag. So it's a proof point that says, it's a technology that's viable and is a extremely robust capability to protect and harden servers that are either in the physical environment or deployed into your VMware infrastructure. Now, the other product that I want to talk about is Symantec Endpoint Protection. And it's been retooled for the last several years to implement unique optimizations built for virtual environments. And so we've maintained our unrivaled security profile. In other words, a lot of security layers that we couldn't implement in an agentless fashion from the hypervisor are still preserved, but we've optimized it to offload certain tasks to a virtual appliance in order to improve performance. And there are some other unique techniques that we've applied that I'll talk about, but again, it's designed to perform in virtual environments very effectively. And so these are all the layers that are available to protect endpoints, whether they're servers or VDI scenarios in the virtual environment, or physical, for example, if you actually have that. But first and foremost, we want to look at threats as they come inbound over the network to that particular endpoint. We want to apply scanning upon execution or write or reads, if you will, for those files, and that would be the typical AV or anti-malware scanning. We typically apply a reputation. So if we don't have a signature file for that, we do lookups to our cloud global intelligence network to validate whether that's something the organization wants to let execute or not based on reputation. We also allow, if it should run, we perform some behavioral analysis and basic, I'll call it sandboxing-like capabilities to say that, okay, this is behaving as a good application, therefore it likely hasn't, or a set of content, therefore it likely isn't malware. And then obviously having an agent in GAP allows us to do a full breadth of repair and remediation that we don't quite honestly have available in an agentless scenario. Now, I'm not saying Symantec isn't supporting agentless, and so for those that did attend VMworld, we did actually show some unique integrations to the new ESX service composer. So as an NSX design partner, we're on the front end of actually being what I will call in the game for agentless 2.0. Or what I would say the next generation agentless security protection. So while we haven't necessarily had a footprint or an offering in, I'll call it the early stages of agentless, with the new software-defined strategy that VMware has announced, we are bringing agentless capabilities to market. They won't be branded as part of Symantec Endpoint Protection going forward, but they will be a new offering focusing on, I'll call it the data center, and so anticipate more from Symantec on that. So some of the optimizations that we did within our Symantec Endpoint Protection for virtual environments and for which customers are implementing today, very simple paradigm. If we have images or servers or desktops coming up from good images, we simply pre-scan those images, mark them as known good, and we apply this capability around virtual image exception as a means to reduce the scope of scanning that we would have to perform. We also accommodate configuration drift from those known good images. So as active resources continue to change, we can take credit through deduplication-like technologies. Say if we've seen that file and it's been pre-scanned across the broader infrastructure, for example, we can take credit for that and preclude future scans on other virtual machines that might exist in that environment. And so through all these various techniques, we can improve performance, particularly from an I/O perspective, upwards of 70%. So we've taken a more intelligent approach to how we provide security versus just saying we want to move everything to the hypervisor. We want to optimize the overall process of providing threat protection to the endpoints. And some of that, in some customer scenarios, might require a thin agent. And yes, we do obviously recognize the architectural benefits of moving everything out of guest and moving it to the hypervisor. And you can see solutions from Symantec from in that area with the upcoming release of vSphere 5.5 coming out with NSX part of that vCloud suite offering. So expect a lot from Symantec coming forward. And again, built for VMware environments largely for us means that we've reduced the overall scan volume. We're leveraging the API sets from within VMware's environment. As Greg had said, legacy offerings are around vShield endpoint, largely rebranded vCloud networking and security, a part of the NSX family, I think longer term. And so these are some of the optimizations that you can see to mitigate, I would say, some of the resource contention issues that we see in environments where customers are trying to get greater and greater consolidation ratios. And so we do have some documents that are out in the space that you can leverage that are proof points, reflecting not only ongoing effectiveness and our focus on maintaining a superior position in that part of the market, but also ensuring or giving customers confidence that our implementations aren't impacting performance when you do virtualize these endpoints as virtual machines. And so the Tally reports, both from a security efficacy and a performance perspective, are available for download, and you can use and apply those in your engagements with your customers. And so I want to leave you with the fact that we are continuing to look at providing unrivaled performance in VMware environments. We have those optimizations and extensions in both Symantec endpoint protection and critical system protection today. And then we are building, I would say, a pure hypervisor only or agentless virtual appliance offering to deliver things like threat protection through NSX environments. So our new offering will be dependent on the new platform. So if you're out there selling, I call it vCloud Suite in the 5.5 landscape, when it releases later, I think in October, we'll be able to support that environment with agentless threat protection. It's also integrated to that auto provisioning or streamlined provisioning process for the security control. So again, we want to look at security as a service and making security fit into the software-defined data center, and similarly drive down the I'll call it the cost or overhead in getting security into those environments from, I'll call it the days down to hours. So that's part of our some upcoming releases you'll see from Symantec. So I'm going to turn it back over to Mia. I appreciate your time and support. And if you have any questions, I think we'll take them toward the end. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Chip. At this time, I would like to turn the presentation over to Ms. Stacy George, who is the Symantec Market Development Specialist here at Ingram Micro.
Thanks, Mia, and thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Here at Ingram Micro, we have a team of over 50 dedicated members that support the Symantec business. Our market development team consists of 2 market development managers who are field deployable, as well as 2 market development specialists who are inside resources for you. We can assist with business planning, tracking your deals, promotions and programs, and seeing your deals through to closure. We also have our Symantec licensing team that can assist with customized quotes, order tracking, and verification, and they can be reached Monday through Friday from 8:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We also offer pre-sales tech support from a team of over 20 specialists that can assist you with the complete Symantec solution, as well as conference in your end user and help with post-sales troubleshooting.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Stacy. And Greg, I'm going to turn it back over to you to discuss the VMware MD team as well.
Sure. So yeah, here at Ingram Micro, we also have a pretty robust team. We have about over 60 associates as well. We're broken down into more of a region base. So we have Demetrius on the West Coast, Bill Pollock covering the Central region, and Justin DeRose covering the East. And those are going to be more of our field deployable market development teams. So you might see them out at events. Each of those have an internal counterpart Chris on the West Coast, Sean on the Central, and Justin on the East. So if you are looking at leveraging any of our programs, need to really get a hold of anybody from a VMware side, I recommend giving either your territory rep a call, or you could just email VMware MD team at Ingram Micro. Again, or we do have our technical support team. I know with all the announcements at VMworld, a lot of exciting things coming up here in the next couple months. If you guys need some help navigating through what was released or how this affects kind of your existing customers or where you should look going forward, please give these guys a call, and we can get you pointed in the right direction.
Great. Thank you so much, Greg. I appreciate it. At this time, you will see two links on the screen, and it is additional information regarding Symantec. And I do want to kind of reiterate a couple of housekeeping items before we open up the lines for Q&A. First, again, we have recorded this presentation for you, so should you want to reference it at a later date and time, we will be sending it out to all the participants. And again, we do have a very exciting offer, and we do have two winners of the $100 Amazon gift cards. The first winner is Vince Hensler from Midland Info Resources Company, and the second is Candace Hart from Nova Technology Solutions, LLC. So congratulations to both Vince and Candace. And just to let you know, we will be sending out communication to you separately on how to redeem those Amazon gift cards. And so with that, operator, if you could please open up the lines for any available questions at this time.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you have a question, please press star followed by 1 on your phone. Then record your first and last name followed by the pound key. To ensure your question has been registered, you must record your name. All questions will be taken in the order received. We will pause momentarily to compile a list of questions. At this time, there are no questions in queue.
Okay. Should there be any additional questions at this time or later on, certainly, we will send out some follow-up communication that will contain some contact information, as well as you will have reference to both the VMware market development team here at Ingram Micro, as well as Symantec resources at Ingram Micro, and that does contain a full list of email and phone numbers for your applicable business. I'd like to take a moment to thank everybody for attending the meeting today, and again, that we will send out a recording of this meeting within the coming days, and a big congratulations to Vince and Candace again for winning the $100 Amazon card. So thank you very much for joining, everybody, and have a wonderful afternoon.